Hi guys, so today's video is going to be my Wispy Wednesday for the 1940s, and I wanted to read you guys a little something as sort of what I got inspiration from for both my Wispy Wednesday and my Fearless Friday video, which I'm going to record in a second. But yeah, it's sort of this little excerpt that I found, and I thought it was really interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and read it for you. It says that makeup was affected by the war, which turned many women's thoughts away from romance and towards simplicity. Lips were a true patriotic red, creamy skin was powdered and smoothly pink. Mascara had found its place on women's faces, although it may have been worn more after work. Romance and practicality fought each other on the home front, where women wanted to look beautiful, even whether swing dancing or working shifts at a shipyard or factory. Makeup was a way of maintaining one's feeling of femininity in a world that was challenging women to take on more of a man's role than was ever allowed before. 1940s women were asked to do a lot, and working for the war effort took a toll. Glamour was in, fresh from Hollywood, and women who were earning their first paychecks were also shopping, dressing elegantly, and using cosmetics like movie stars. Part of the rationale was that the nation's women couldn't afford to look frumpy in a time of war, and the other reason for spending so much time and effort on one's appearance was to stay somewhat positive and optimistic. Putting a brave face on was more of an interior process. Wearing makeup and nice clothes was a statement of self-worth and confidence. I thought that was really interesting. Of course, it's more focusing a little bit more on the American side of things in terms of, like, being patriotic, but still, like, I'm from Canada, and I think that, like, hey, Canadian men went to war at that time too, and one of our patriotic colors is red as well, so I think it kind of translates over to my history and my country's background. Again, but I thought it was really interesting to say that, like, hey, even though they were sort of adapting more of a men's role, they still wanted to maintain that femininity. And then, of course, red lipstick. I think that's, like, the main focus of the 40s, is red lips, and I thought it was really cool. Reading more into the makeup side, everything, like, the eyeshadow was kept really simple, and the main focus, again, was really lips. Also, coming out of the 30s, the brows changed a little bit of a shape, so I'll talk about that once we get into the tutorial. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you a little bit of what I was inspired by, so I thought it was really cool that they kind of put that in there. I don't know, I found it on, like, when I was Googling 1940s makeup, so I thought it was really cool. So yeah, if you guys want to know how to do this, then just stay tuned, and here's the tutorial. Okay, so to start off this look, I did want to focus a little bit on skin. Skin was kept, again, very just, like, matte and simple, matching their own skin color. However, one thing I did read about was the fact that they'd put on, like, a darker color foundation than their natural skin tone, and then powder it with a lighter to kind of even it out. Again, you don't really necessarily have to do this, but I just went ahead and applied some face powder, actually, and just kind of, like, matted my skin down a little bit more than usual. So then the next thing I'm going to do is focus on brows. Coming out of the 30s with that very sort of rounded, arched brow, they really wanted to focus on, like, more natural shape and a little bit more natural fullness as opposed to that very, very thin plucked brow. So what I did, I just went ahead and kind of filled mine in a little bit. So the colors that I'm using today is this one, which is a little bit of a gray tone, and this one here. And these, by the way, this is just like a MAC palette that I have. I don't know all the names for all the colors. I think this one was like a limited edition, and I think that one is Wedge from MAC. So in case you wanted to know. So I'm gonna mix those two together and just apply that right to my brows. Okay, so once the brows are done, you can see that it just kind of, like, frames the face a little bit more now, because the focus is really going to be sort of, like, on brows and lips, not that much eyeshadow going on, because we are sort of focusing more on, like, the working side of the 1940s, so they didn't wear too much eyeshadow, like, to work or anything of, like, mass spectacularness on their eyebrows. So I'm just going to go ahead and focus on eyeshadow. So I'm just going to go ahead and prime my lid. This is something that if you guys want to recreate it, then do it. I'm going to wear this for a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and put this on. Okay, so once you have the primer on, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to even out my eyelid, and I'm using Blanc type eyeshadow from MAC. And it just matches my skin tone, so use whatever, like, matte eyeshadow that you have that just matches your own skin tone. It's just to even out the eyelid. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that and apply that. Okay, so once that matte color is on, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of color into the crease. Again, nothing really crazy was going on in the eyelid, but they did use a little bit more of, like, gray tones and stuff like that. So again, I'm going into this palette, and I'm using a little bit of this one, which is, what the hell is this called? I have no idea what this is called. It's called a Praise Ski. It's the same one that I use for my brows. So I'm using that one, and I'm using a little bit of this color here, which again I don't know what that is either. Just sort of like gray tones, and I'm just going to put that right into my crease. Okay, so differing a little bit from the 30s is that you can actually blend this color up a little bit more. In the 30s it was a little bit lower to kind of accentuate that sort of heavy eye. In the 40s they were just sort of applying it into their natural crease, which is what I did, and just sort of blended it up softly so that it all fades nicely. Okay, so then for eyeliner, again, I don't want to use a really heavy eyeliner. That is something that I'm going to be using in my next tutorial for when it sort of amps it up a little bit. But I just wanted to put in sort of like a nice gray, grayish toned eyeliner. So I'm using a mix of these two colors. This is Carbon from MAC, and that one I think is Black Tide. So I'm just taking that on a little brush and just kind of matting it out so that it's not super, like just putting a little bit on my hand so it's not super dark. And then I'm just going to go ahead and line my eye with that. And the reason why I wanted to use gray and not black is, one, because it's a little bit less harsh, but it's just kind of keeping in the sort of idea that like this is something that they wore during the day and it wasn't like super crazy. And I wanted sort of the change between day and night to be noticeable, so that's why I'm going with sort of like a softer eyeliner during the day. Okay, so once that eyeliner's on, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a coat of mascara. They really didn't apply very much mascara at that time, again because they sort of focused it more towards like the evening looks that they did, but I am going to put a coat of mascara on, and I'm just going to avoid putting it on the bottom lashes. Okay, so once the eyes are done, you can see that they just look like this. Again, very simple because they didn't do anything too crazy. So then for cheeks, I'm just again keeping that simple as well, and I'm just using a peachy colored blush. I'm using this one from the Coastal Scents 10 palette. If you guys ever seen me, this is the one from Coastal Scents. See, you can get it on there. So I'm using this like middle peachy color, and I'm just applying this right on my cheeks. Okay, so once cheeks are done, it sort of has that just kind of like general peachy pink glow. The next thing I'm going to focus on is lips. Now, lips are really huge in the 40s. That's really something that they played up. They wore a lot of red lipstick, which I love. It's something that I pull inspiration from all the time. And it was really interesting, actually, to read that, like, a main reason why they wore a lot of like red lipsticks was, especially I know in America, it was a way to show like while the men were at war that they were patriotic, to wear like just really nice bright red lips and stuff. I don't know, I thought that was really cool. The shape was also kept sort of rounded more on the top to kind of keep that like subtle like cutesy look. So I'm going to kind of emulate that, and this is again a little bit different from my regular red lips, which you will see in my next video. But this one I'm using like, how did I just throw a lipstick? Anyway, so it's differing from my other red lip. I'm using the same sort of idea, but I'm using a different lipstick. This is actually Ruby Roo, and I thought that this is sort of the most true, like, sort of patriotic red that I have. A little bit brighter than Russian Red, which is my favorite lipstick, so I'm going to use this one. It's also matte, which is something that they were really a fan of, especially during the day, so that's what I'm using. So I'm going to go ahead and line my lips with this one. This is a Hot Red lip liner from NYX, and go over it with Ruby Roo, and I'll show you how to finish up the rest. Okay, so once lips are filled in with that Ruby Roo color, the next thing I'm going to do is, it's already a matte lipstick, but I really like my lipstick matte, and they definitely did in the 40s as well, so I'm just going to do the old trick. You can see that that lipstick is so matte that it really doesn't come off, but it does actually make your lipstick last longer. It's something that I do all the time. It's a little bit of a trick, if you don't know. I always line my lips, fill it in with liner, do a coat of lipstick, matte it, do another coat of lipstick, and I find it makes my lipstick last like 12 hours. It'll last all day, I find, if you do that, especially with matte lipsticks. Yeah, so that is my kind of final look for the 1940s, more wearable side, even though it still is, again, the main focus is lips. If you aren't comfortable wearing red lips, then this 40s and 50s is not necessarily your decade that you want to like sort of get inspiration by. But still, it's good to just recognize that they did love red lipstick, and I think it's awesome to focus on that. Yeah, so if hopefully you guys enjoyed this. It's again really simple, but I think effective. And stay tuned to my next tutorial where I show you the more kind of dramatic hair side of the 1940s. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this, and until my next video, I'll talk to all you soon.